So what we're going to do today is talk about how the angles of a spreader, how you place them in, and also the angles on the spreader itself have a lot to do with how the steel is going to move. Remember, steel is stupid. It has no idea where you want it to go. It only knows where you're pushing it to. So a couple of housekeeping rules for today. Number one, this is not a speed evolution. This is not how fast can we jerk this car apart and get the patient out. This is about giving you the information to make your next extrication go better. So let's talk about spreaders. With me today is Mitch Powell. Mitch is the Indiana representative for Genesis Rescue Systems. So let's take a look at our spreaders themselves. The spreader tips are vital to your spreading operation. So when we're done here, or the next time you're at the station, or whenever you're doing training, go out and take a look at your spreader tips, and particularly the angles that your spreader tips are set at. Now, a number of manufacturers have changed their spreader tip angles over the last couple of years to give it different angles and different designs. So if you take a look at the Genesis series of tips, all the front tips are angled backwards and the back tips are angled forwards. A lot of people think that a spreader does this. A spreader doesn't do this. A spreader does this. It is a radius. And we're going to use that arc to our advantage. So as the spreader tips are opening, as they make that arc, sometimes you're going to have a little bit of slip on your spreaders themselves. And I'm sure some of you guys have seen this happen. What these tips are designed to do with the conical points of hardened steel in the inside and outside is grip the steel a little bit better, especially when you're making that wide opening, and the spreaders are doing exactly what they're supposed to, giving you a nice wide angle spread. That's exactly what we're looking for. If you have a series of cups, you have to be particularly just careful that it may slide out. The more chances you give steel to shed away, especially in the newer cars and the higher strength steels, the greater the chance is of spreading. Of slipping. So this is live, by the way, and I'm probably going to jack some of this up, so don't know what to tell you. Sorry about that. So today we're using the brand spanking new SLI series for Genesis, the 54 spreader, the telescopic ram, and the SL3 series still run on 28 volt butt of our smooth cut blades. So Mitch is going to come over. We're going to demonstrate just the spreaders themselves. So one thing you want to keep in mind, when you're the spreader person, okay, you don't have to hold the spreader in your hand the entire time. You're going to get fatigued with anybody's spreader. It doesn't matter whose it is, because you're taking between 40 and 60 pounds and you're holding on to it. So as long as the spreader is in the ready to work position in the extrication, and that means the tips are completely closed, you can stand in this position. The weight of the tool is on the ground. I know that all I have to do is call for my spreader person to come over, and he will instantly bring over the spreader, turn it on, and be ready to function, as opposed to standing with it in his hands the entire time. Mitch, I'm going to have you move right over to here. And just put the tips on the ground if you would. So we're going to talk about doing a crush down. Now, this is no particular endorsement of one particular method. This is just one way of doing things. There are multitudes of excellent extrication instructors out there. The key for you is to watch the videos that are out there. Go to some of the trainings. Don't do the same crap we've been doing for 25 years, because those techniques are old and outdated, and they really don't work on a lot of the new car technology. Using a spreader is all about getting the proper angle to use the car to your advantage. Now, me personally, I'm not real big on taking the hinges first. If you take the hinges first, the later pin is still going to be attached and locked, and the door is going to do a lot of flopping. If you take the nadir pin first, the strength of the hinges will allow that door to move the way it's supposed to move. Now, I've had guys go, yeah, but if I take the nadir first, or if I take the hinges first, I can just jiggle the door and it'll fall right off. Well, then just jiggle the freaking door and let it fall right off, and don't waste any time with the hinges themselves. Use the car's construction to your advantage, okay? Trying to get a car door open, depending on your size and the tools that you have, can be extremely difficult. If we use the construction of the vehicle to our advantage and also the angle of the spreader to our advantage, everything goes a whole lot smoother, right? This is a bit of a high door. Mitch is a big dude, right? If you're a little bit tinier, you may have a problem getting your spreader up into this angle. And this is not our spreader, this is everybody's spreader. So one of the things you can do is use your body mechanics to get the spreader up into position, okay? If you're shorter in stature or perhaps a female on the fire department, this is no denigration of female, this is just a simple fact, okay? Holding a tool up can sometimes be very awkward. So what you can do is get yourself into a proper position, grab the handle of the tool, get your hand on the other handle, the control knob, and as you lift up, push the opposite hand down and then just get it up onto the car. Would you be so kind? So now the weight of the tool is resting all the car. Now anybody can maneuver this tool into any direction we want it to, okay? You want to try to stay on the back side of the car if at all possible, because as you're doing the spread, if the door pops, you want to make sure you're not in the path of that door popping on you, right? So let's get her into position. Start to make your spread. And stop. So, come on over and take a look at this position. Would you please, Matt? So let's take a look at our spreader angle. Using that radius to our advantage, we want to set our spreader angle properly so the top arm catches the roof line. The bottom arm catches the interior trim of the vehicle itself. Now keep in mind, this is one way of doing it, not the perfect way, not any way, because everywhere is correct in the right circumstance. This is just one way of doing it. If you're sloppy and you bring the bottom of the spreader down and all you do is catch the window frame will bow up, but you won't get the spreading angle that we're looking for. We want to make sure the spreading angle is correct. Because we're using that radius, what we're doing here is pushing from the strength of the roof line onto the door and outward. The door is going to fold onto the rocker panel and roll itself out every single time. Would you be so kind? Good. Stop right there. Let it go. Come on around the back. So, take a look at the gap that we've made right here. We can now exploit that gap to get the door to slide downward. One of the worst things that I've ever seen, and I see all the time, is when somebody takes a spreader and they slam it into the car. Imagine your mom's head is in a snare drum and you're pounding on it by slamming a spreader into the car repeatedly. There's no need to do that. You're not going to get those tips in any deeper by slamming it in there hard. The only thing you're going to do is scare the crap out of this patient, plain and simple. Allow the spreader to do the work for you. The other thing you want to keep in mind is as you're doing this, because the body outlines of the car will always be like this. As I slam a spreader in there, the outside arm of my spreader can only go up in the air. We want that spreader arm to be downward so we can use all the strength of the rocker panel and the curvature of the bottom of the door to our advantage to get the door to move away. Mitch, would you be so kind? Let's go ahead and start taking the door. So you can see how Mitch has moved himself onto the outside position, so he has full view of everything that's going on. Stop right there. So take a look. Matt, you got this? So take a look at our spreader angle. You can see how the notch is about to let that go, okay? Hopefully that door is going to pop right off of here. One of the things you want to be careful of is allowing this outer skin to tear away. If that outer skin tears away, a lot of times you're going to lose the effectiveness of what you're doing. Yes, the finger of pointing. So come on in here and take a look. Come right from this side. So this last little curvature of the door, right, is a lot of times the portion that you want to be on, because here's where the strength is. Now I'm going to allow Mitch to keep going just to see what happens, and hopefully we'll be able to roll that door right off. Go ahead, Mitch. Stop right there. So let's take a look. Did it come off perfectly? No, it didn't. But that's going to happen in the real world. So once you have things start to tear, it's not a big deal. You want to make sure that your cutter's in the ready to work position. Your cutter can just come in and make the cut. Okay, I'm going to grab the cutter. So, one of the things we talked about last time was also maybe getting the window frames out of the way. would you be so kind to finish that door, please? So Matt, I'm going to bring you around to the back side. So now we're going to take a look at our bottom. There's a lot of controversy on which way to take the hinges. Do you take the bottom of the bottom, the top of the top? This is my preferred method. I like taking the bottom of the bottom hinge, driving the door up, then taking the top of the top and driving the door off. That's my preferred method. Any way is correct in the right circumstance. If you take a look down here, you can see how it's tough to see. Again, if we lay our spreader in the proper angle, we can open that gap up so we can get a good bite on the hinges or to spread them off. Mitch, you want to come in and give me a little spread out? Stop right there. So, proper spread angle, all we're doing is making a nice big gap right here. So now we can bring our spreaders in, okay, right under the hinge and then on top. Remember, you don't really want an angle on your spreader while you're doing this because you want to be able to take those hinges smoothly and efficiently. Tuck in a little bit more there. There you go. Close her up. Get under the hinge. There's one. Now let's go top of the top. Okay. Let's get that out of the way. So now we've gotten one door off just by using the proper angles of what we're going to do. So let's take a look at the front door. When you take a look at the impaction that we have here, we know this was a pretty severe driver's side front hit. When you take a look at the steel, you can see that it's moving inward towards the passenger compartment. What we want to do is potentially get that out of the way. The first thing we're going to do is get this door up and out of our way so we have plenty of access. Would you be so kind, Mitch? Good. Right up underneath it. Perfect. Good. Excellent. Thank you, sir. So now we've got complete access to what we're looking at. So let's take a look. You can see that we've put no stabilization underneath this vehicle. And the reason is because you can see how strong we're going to use the strong parts of the vehicle, or how we're going to use the strong parts of the vehicle to remove the weak parts of the vehicle. If you take a look down here, I have solid rocker. I also right up here have a little hole and part of my frame rail. Steel will always go to the path of least resistance. So what we may have to do is adjust some of the steel, excuse me, some of the steel out to get it to go where we want. There are guys out there that absolutely abhor relief cuts. I'm real big on making the relief cuts because if I can get it to go where I want it to go by making the proper relief cuts, I control the bat, the ball, and the ballpark. When I have those three things under my control, I can get it to go where I want it to go, not where the construction of the vehicle or the impact force it to go. So come on over and take a look here. Matt, one of the things that we may be able to do is potentially displace some of this back out. Mitch, you want to come over and just give me a little displacement out? Let's see if we get any movement. Good. Now that's one of those techniques that you can use. Let's say your battery is crushed and you need to get to that battery cable. Maybe you can displace that out just a little bit. We've got a little bit more in line. The other thing we want to make sure we're doing is giving the steel every opportunity to go in the right position. Making a relief cut on your A-post is going to give us a chance to get the steel to move upward with no obstruction. We know we're already torn here. We know my hinge pillar is still somewhat attached, but I have a weak spot there. Mitch, I'm going to have you put the spreader down. Come on over with your cutter and we're going to cut right up here. If you can take a second and get all the plastic, rubber, and weather stripping out of the way, I highly suggest you do that. One of the things that we see a lot is people will watch an operation. Make sure if you're the incident commander, you're the boss on scene, that you have your people working the entire time. Don't watch what's going on here. If you're assigned to the Sawzall, you should be working the entire time, right? Making sure that we're weakening the structure enough so we can get it to go where we want it to go. Again, not where the impact dictates it. So a lot of us were taught cut way down low on the A-post. The reason we were taught that is, the theory was, you won't drag a patient over an A-post. I have never, in 30 plus years of fire service, drug a patient over an A-post. But I have cut down too low and then screwed myself for trying to get a ram or anything into. A good rule of thumb is when you're looking at it from the side, see where the dash juts out to, and as long as we've checked that there's no cylinder here, no airbag cylinder that we're going to potentially cut into, cut up just about level with where the dash juts out to. So I'm gonna have you make one cut. Remember, you're always coming in from the top. When you come in with a cutter down low, when you come in with a cutter from down low, you have a greater chance of the dust of this glass falling into the center of your blades. That glass is made of sand, and that sand gets eventually into the lubrication between your cutting blades. So you want to make sure you're coming in up high. So here's the relief cut that we made. And remember, this is all about angles. Here's my cut. If the bottom of my A pops free, I can spread, I can ram very, very easily. If they stay together, before you ram, before you push, have your cutter slide up, make another cut. You want to give it room to go. If the top falls over the bottom, slide up and make another cut. We want to make sure that nothing here jams. Would you do me a favor and just give me another cut right up here, please? Make sure somebody grabs this piece so it doesn't fall on my mom. Thank you. So now, let's grab our spreader again, and we're going to come right up into here. I'm going to have you come from that side, Mitch. You're going to come right up into here, up in the hole, and let's see if we get any movement whatsoever. Nice and easy. And stop right there. Okay. So, Matt, come on over here. So we've got a couple of different cameras on our extremely unscientific view of a couple of yardsticks here to see if there's any motion. Look at my spreader angle, okay? The car is tilted like this, so what we're doing is getting the strength of what's left of the rocker panel, even though it's kind of rusty and crappy, up into our tightening position right up here, which is part of the frame rail, and into the hole. Here's my start point, okay? Give me a little bit of spread if you'd be so kind.
31 seconds.
Give me a little more. And stop right there. So, did we gain a little bit of space? Yes. Did we gain a tremendous amount of space? No, not necessarily, but again, this is a game of just literally inches. So if I can get just enough, you can also see how this is kind of coming apart, which is perfect. Down here it's a little bit weaker. This is just one technique, but you can see how the spreader angle is using the strength of the bottom into the top. Give me a little bit more if you'd be so kind. Go about another inch. Good, stop right there. So now we can see that we're kind of pushing in a little bit, so we would have to stop at this point and reposition or come at it from another angle, realizing that we've made no relief cut here whatsoever, and that's fine. If you notice that you haven't made a relief cut, you can always stop the operation and make sure that you make the relief cut to give that relief of the steel and give it somewhere to go. The other thing you want to be very cognizant of and very careful of is your spreader position. If you have hose-bound tools at this point, your hoses may be digging into the ground, and you want to be extremely cognizant of that. The other thing you want to be careful of is if you have a throttle control type grip, and this is no denigration of throttle control grips, this is just a simple fact, because Mitch is watching this, as most people do, they pay no attention to where their operational hand is. So if the tool gets jammed into the car or into the ground, there's a potential for you to get stuck. So make sure you stop just shy of that, or some of the other people like the incident commander should be watching Mitch and be able to say, hey, stop right there, and then we'll redo the operation. The other thing that we want to make sure we're doing is weakening the structure. So Mitch, would you be so kind to go around to the other side? So, on the far side, we've had people working the entire time. They're not just here watching. If you have a center console that you cannot see through, chances are great that you have transmission down tubes or transmission tunnel supports or whatever you want to call them. We've highlighted them in orange here, and you can see on this one, there are 2 of them. So the entire time we were working on this side, we had a crew on the other side removing plastic to get to the strong points that we're going to separate. Go ahead, Mitch.
All right, so as we come to this side of the vehicle, you take Sawzall, battery cable cutters, things of that nature. And as you can see, what we've highlighted here in orange, get all this out of the way, and we see, as I point with my Sawzall, we see this piece of steel in here, okay? If you look really deep, I don't know, Matt, if you can get in there, but you'll see one on the other side as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to make 2 cuts on this side to get a chunk of that out of there. So then I can take my Sawzall, dive it deeper into there, and actually cut the other side from this side of the vehicle so that we're not reaching over our patient in the driver compartment.
While Mitch is doing that, I'm going to move some of the equipment out of here. How are we looking?
Looking good.
Okay.
All right, Matt.
I hate when that happens. We all cut through both sides?
Yep. Matt, if you want to look down in there where I cut the 2, and then I reach through and I cut the other one from that side.
Got her?
Got it.
All right. So there's a lot of controversy in the extrication tool market on whether you need a ram or not. Do you need a ram? Technically, no. The problem is, when you need a ram, you can't just airdrop that sucker down to your extrication seal. Having a ram on hand is always a good idea. So come on over this way, Matt, let's take a look. Mitch, I'm going to have you position the ram at the base of the B and right up into our... Come right into here. And stop. So let's take a look. We've highlighted the dash pipe, okay? Again, center console that you can't see through, chances are great that you have a dash pipe or some type of dash bar that goes along there. Everything is attached to that bar. Now, we're not going to make a relief cut here because we can already see how much crumple zone is there, okay? The key is to take a look and say, hey, you know what? I'm getting a lot of lift or not. So, and you can roll that right to the outside where you're going. Good, stop right there. So take a look at where we started, and here's where we finished up, okay? So we've got a number of inches of space made out of that just right there. Scott, do you have a view of the camera on the far side? Did we get some distance out of there? Fantastic. Now the nice part about it is, when you take this ram away, some of this is going to stay. Now if you take a look down here, this is also where maybe a Sawzall or perhaps another cutter is going to come into play. Don't be afraid to cut all this crap out of your way. Tiny little things make all the difference. So let's take a look. Come right here. See that tiny little piece of steel right there? That's the kind of thing that will jack you up. Any steel here is going to cause it to be harder for your tools to operate. That tiny little piece of steel will hold us up. So don't be afraid. The hardest thing for firemen to do is to stop. Look at me for a second, will you? Thanks. Firemen hate to stop. We hate it. It's like, I'm the biggest, strongest fireman in the whole wide world. I'm going to get this with my spreader. Every now and then, take a second. Take a look at the steel. If it's not going exactly how you want it to go, we missed something. Don't let your ego carry you past the extrication for this patient. Take a second. Stop. If it's not going how you want it to go, take a good look at what's there. Somebody needs to be watching the entire operation the entire time. If it's nighttime, get the flashlights out. You can't see in the dark, plain and simple. And we want to make sure that we're always operating as efficiently as possible for that patient. It has nothing to do with us. This person is scared to death. The better we get at our job by knowing how our spreaders are, knowing how our tips work, knowing how our cutters work, knowing what size rams we have, and weakening the structure to our best ability, the more we can get the steel to go away from the patient to get them to a definitive care facility as soon as possible.
And Gary, if I may, one thing to keep in mind also, especially when you're using a ram, is make sure you're watching both ends of that tool whenever you're making your extension. So if you notice there for a second, I was watching both ends and this actually slipped off of the rocker panel. I could have kept going, but what I'm doing is I'm causing a possibility that would slip out and potentially move that ram into the patient compartment. So what do? You stop, you retract the ram, reposition, and then go back to work. So make sure you're watching both ends. Go ahead.
Super. Thanks for watching this edition of Genesis Live Cut.